welcome to Viewpoint. I'm joined by Anton Korynevych, an expert in international law. Anton, many thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you, Rahim.
We wanted to speak to you about the Holodomor, that's the famine in Ukraine, 1932, 1933. We have commemoration events happening this week here in Ukraine and around the world. I wanted to ask you, as an expert in international law, what is the legal viewpoint on this? Holodomor has been classified as genocide by a number of states, but not the United Nations. Is that significant? Do we need that United Nations recognition?
Concerning this question, of course it would have been very good to get this recognition of the United Nations, of the United Nations General Assembly, of Holodomor really as a genocide of Ukrainians. But understanding that the United Nations General Assembly is blocked in this point because of position of several states, Ukraine really got nice alternative and got this legal recognition of the genocide by the national parliaments of the countries of the world. More than 20 of them got these resolutions on recognition, and I think it's a good result, because not only the countries who are traditional partners or friends of Ukraine did this, but also countries who are rather far away from us, but really who looked at this from the moral perspective, legal perspective, and understood that this is really the genocide. So I think that in the situation when the United Nations level is blocked, we really need to look for alternatives, and I think Ukraine did good in this perspective, but we need to try harder, probably to get this number higher, not 20, yes, but let's say more and more countries to recognize Holodomor.
Does the lack of a United Nations recognition, does that have any practical consequences? Is it really more just a cultural and a moral question, something for Ukrainians to understand that what they suffered has been recognized? Or are there actual practical implications to this?
I mean, legally it's rather hard to bring to responsibility the persons who actually committed Holodomor, because it's many years have passed. So I would say this have legal impact, because when United Nations does these issues, everybody, the whole world understands, and the whole world recognizes. United Nations General Assembly gave the resolution concerning the Great Famine, concerning the Holodomor in Ukraine, but it called it like a tragedy of Ukrainian people, but not used the word genocide. We all understand why. So, of course, it would have been better to get this both from legal perspective and moral perspective. But in the issue, in the case when it's not really when the Russian Federation will not vote for this, Russian Federation's, let's say, friends, partners, will not do this, Ukrainian way is rather good. I want also Ukrainians to remember that Ukraine has the law of Ukraine on Holodomor, where Holodomor is recognized as a genocide on the national level. So on the national level of the national legislation of Ukraine, this recognition is also done. So I think Ukraine did good in this case.
And the reasons why you say that we all know why it hasn't happened at the United Nations, that is principally to do with Russia,
yeah.
Which obviously hasn't recognized Holodomor as genocide. How much do you feel like that is related to the current government of Russia, led by President Vladimir Putin? Can you see that ever changing in the future?
I think if Russia would have a really democratic and rather liberal government, the changes might happen. But I would say that all the Russian politicians never recognized this Holodomor as the genocide of Ukrainians, because they never wanted to recognize that Soviet government did something bad to a particular nation, to particular Ukrainian people. So I think that it doesn't do with Vladimir Putin's government, with Dmitry Medvedev's government. It has some issues concerning the whole Russian policy throughout the whole years. So Russia really doesn't want this recognition to happen, because it would be a really, like, you know, moral strike against the Russian Federation. But I want to say that Armenia has the same, let's say, situation, yes. We all practically understand that the events which happened in 1915 in the Ottoman Empire was really the genocide of Armenian people, yeah. But Armenia also understanding that United Nations level is blocked, yes, because of position of Turkey and other countries from the Middle East, let's say. They also tried to do this, to make this recognition by the parliaments of the countries. Yes. And today, pretty much whole of the world remembers and understands and recognizes that the events in Armenia were actually genocide. So
Yeah.
we are not alone in this situation, let's say.
And I wonder, is the attitude in Russia towards this is part of a wider question, I think, in Russia about their attitude towards the Soviet past, which is obviously a very thorny issue. And Vladimir Putin has tried to sort of, people say, rehabilitate Stalin and sort of ignore some of the crimes committed during his time and sort of paint him in much brighter colours. Do you see, how far do you agree with that view, that this is really about a greater question of sort of how we view the Soviet past? I mean, in Russia and in Ukraine as well.
I think this idea is rather important because Russia really recognizes that Russia, is actually Soviet Union, that Russia continues to be what Soviet Union was for the international law, for international relations. Before that, Russia continues to be in the United Nations Security Council because of Soviet Union. Russia continues to play this role and wants to play this role of the main country, of the main successor, let's say, of the Soviet Union. And of course, as being the main successor, you wouldn't have the idea of recognizing the crimes of your predecessors, of your, let's say, earlier governments. So their policy is rather, I would say, understandable in this case. They don't want to say that our predecessors, the leaders who really created the big country, big industry, who really created one of the, let's say, biggest powers in the world, that they committed crimes.
Yes, because they still feel themselves to be part of that same line.
For sure.
You know, the current country.
For sure. I think that, yes.
But are there, Anton, do you think, are there any dangers of using this word genocide? Why, if you could just play devil's advocate for us, why would we say, actually, no, we shouldn't call this genocide? This is a dangerous thing. For example, would it take away some responsibility from Ukraine for what happened here? Is there a danger that we then look at it as something which was imposed on this country by an outside power, and therefore we don't look at ourselves and we won't then change anything?
Well, I think that we really shall understand that Holodomor was a crime of Soviet, let's say, government, both on the level of Soviet Union, Moscow level, and Republican level here in Ukraine, in Kiev. The Kiev leaders of the Communist Party also were responsible for this. So I would say that Ukrainians understand that not only Moscow was like a leader, was like the guys who were telling what to do, and here in Kiev on the Republican level, or in Kharkiv, they decided how to do this. So I think that using the word genocide isn't dangerous at all, because we really, if we look at the concept of genocide, and if we look that the concept of genocide is really the crimes against the national, ethnic, religious, let's say racial group, so we really see that the events which happened in Ukraine really can be classified like this. And I want to emphasize on one issue that the Professor Raphael Lemkin, who really invented this concept of genocide, so he is the very author of it. He, in 1950s, strictly understood the Holodomor as a genocide. He called it Soviet genocide of Ukrainian people. So, I mean, who could have better knowledge of what is genocide than the person who really invented this concept?
And, I mean, he initially came up with it. It was used for the Holocaust, that's correct, to try to understand what happened to the Jewish nation.
For sure, for sure. People. When Holocaust came to the arena, let's say in 1940s, there were no such words, no such concept. Raphael Lemkin invented it to show that the, let's say, actions of the Nazi Germany concerning the Jewish people were actually genocide.
And do you think by putting that on the same level as Holodomor, for you, that doesn't make you uncomfortable in any way? You believe that's the correct place for
I don't see, yeah. I think that if we look at the place in the international relations, international arena, of Holocaust of Jewish, of Holodomor of Ukrainians, of massive killings of Armenians, of massive killings in Cambodia, I think that these are the same crimes of the same gravity. So I don't feel any I don't feel uncomfortable in comparing them.
And Anton, we're just coming to the end now. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So just looking perhaps ahead for us a little bit, we're going to be commemorating Holodomor this week. What do we need to take from this? What have we learned from Holodomor and the ensuing controversies about what to call it and how to think about it? What do we need to now take forward into our current era?
I think, taking into account the situation which is now ongoing in Ukraine, I mean Crimea and Donbass, of course, people may have some feelings that some people are different, some people don't have some rights, don't need some guarantees, but this actually what can be the reason for the genocide, not recognizing that some people, that some group of people have the same, let's say, situation, should stand near all the other groups of people. So I think it's a nice, while commemorating now the Holodomor, understanding that now Ukrainian nation, Ukrainian people should be united, and we shouldn't look for diversities, and we shouldn't, enforce these diversities, even on the criminal level, of course.
All right. Well, Anton, many, many thanks for joining us. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, but thank you very much for an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Rahim.
You've been watching Viewpoint. I've been joined by Anton Korynevych. He's an expert in international law. We've been discussing the Holodomor, commemoration events of which will be taking place this week in Ukraine and around the world. Join us again next time for another edition.